Here it is. This is the subject of today's conversation.
Where have I seen that before?
you might have picked it up somewhere. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for taking time in the first half of the first month of the year to get in conversation with us.
You're welcome.
I'd like to give folks a quick background, and will you just add the cool bits that I miss here? So, Ashok Miranda, a decade at Disney as a creative director, but also as a producer. And I think a lot of just good stories, good instincts. A lot of what comes through in the book comes from the richness of that decade. A half a decade at Sony Pictures TV in Asia, based in Singapore. And then 7 years running and change, running Transform and Transcend, which is your current organization. And I think there's a few things going on there, from speaking, just stand and deliver speaking, but also working with executives, senior business leaders, heads of organizations, just to help them transform companies, whether that's from sort of good to great or from, needing to get to good in the first place, etc. Can you say more about Ashok Miranda? Can we make that topic one?
Well, first of all, thank you, Kevin, for doing this. Really appreciate the time and effort. No, I think that sums it up pretty well. I think after I left the corporate world, I felt this calling to help businesses, but I wasn't sure what it was about. I had been a brand strategist and helped build many sort of brands for the companies that I worked for, like you mentioned. But there was something at the core that I felt needed to be fixed with companies. And the more I was exposed to the outside world, is very sort of cloistered in the corporate world for many, many years. And then I went out and I found that this thing called culture needed to be addressed. And so I had experienced an amazing corporate journey with the companies that you mentioned. And so, I felt that small businesses, especially SMEs, were not focusing on the core thing that was going to make them very, very successful and help them to scale their business and grow phenomenally and attract and retain the best talent. And this thing was culture. And around 7 years ago, I started writing blogs and around this and posting stuff, and I came up with this word called culturitis, which is the disease of toxic culture. And a lot of people were fascinated with this idea, and that led to me writing this book, Kevin. And what was missing really was a blueprint in terms of how to create a powerful and strong culture in a company, and there was no template, no blueprint for that. And I thought that was going to be my gift to the business world. I had to figure this thing out, and so I came up with an ADCOE. I call it the ADCOE culture transformation process that I use today for my consulting work and my speaking, and I shared this. At the heart of this is really the fact that companies today can be a tremendous force for good. And they just haven't realized it. I mean, most companies are very transactional in nature. And I think as the fight for talent picks up, and we're seeing more and more companies, the best companies attract the best talent. That's how it's generally done. But there's tens of thousands of companies right here in Singapore and around the region that are really good at what they do, but they haven't sort of articulated their story well and haven't really built this core culture from inside out. And that's what my purpose is to help these businesses rise to their full potential, rise to greatness. And I really want to build a better business world. So that's what's motivating and driving me. And I'm writing my second book, by the way, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
We're not going to let you off the hook until we hear a couple of Easter egg sentences about what's going on with book 2. That's great. Well, here's a passage that I want to start with. Ironically, it's at the end. It's under the section final thoughts, but I think it's a way to give people a kind of point of entry in. Building a company culture. See if you recognize the writer. Building a company culture isn't easy. It takes the will to change and the perseverance and tenacity to stay the course. It's like going to the gym. You know it's good for you, but you don't see the results immediately. You put in your solid effort consistently, and eventually you begin to see incremental changes that spur you on. Hang in there, keep at it, continue to do what is right, and you are guaranteed to see positive results. The reward is truly fulfilling. Believe me.
Absolutely. It's building a muscle, and it takes a fair amount of perseverance and commitment and hard work to get it done. And you oftentimes don't see things happening overnight, right? But as leaders, we need to look over the horizon and guide this company to its full fruition and to its full potential. And so building that muscle, building that culture muscle, every day, every meeting, every strategy session, and thinking about, the reason why this company exists and what we bring to our customers, and the way we want to treat our employees, and the way we want to help our employees reach their full potential, become the best versions of themselves. And I think that's what needs to happen over time. And I think it starts with, obviously, the great vision, the purpose vision from a leadership perspective, and then working at it, right? Working at it in everything that you do. One of the things that I've evolved from this book is helping companies become truly purpose-driven. And what I mean by that, Kevin, is you have managed to permeate your purpose, which is a greater good, into every aspect of the business operation. And today we see that, sort of creating truly passionate employees, people that are willing to give 100% at work, companies that are resilient, they adapt to change, they're very flexible, they're very agile. And this comes from that mindset. This comes from that mindset and the culture that has been nurtured over time. So yes, oftentimes, when I speak with leadership teams, they say, yeah, but how is this going to impact the bottom line? I don't see the immediate results, right? I mean, culture, this thing is fluff, come on, it just happens. You don't create it. So this is the standard sort of answers that I get until we have a deeper conversation. And people see that everything that is happening in that company at the moment is kind of connected to culture, right? The typical manifestations of this is, low employee morale. There's no innovation. We can't attract the right talent. We can't seem to retain people. There's all kinds of issues. There's just no commitment and passion in the people. Company bottom line, the profits are down. We're losing market share. And this is all, again, a manifestation of culture, and they don't see that.
Yeah.
And today the metrics are there. You can directly associate company culture with your bottom line. I mean, Jim Collins obviously highlighted this in his book, Good to Great. Behind every successful company is a strong company culture, right? So, but creating those tangible connections, and that's what I help companies do as well right now, where you can see the results of those things happening almost immediately as you begin the journey.
So I want to put two things together. You use this metaphorical language. It's actually in several layers here. I mean, just in the title and the subtitle alone, culling is a medical. Well, it's used in a few ways, but culling is medical term. Itis, anything with that suffix, pancreatitis, gingivitis, etc. So we know what kind of metaphor we're talking about here. How to rid your company of this toxic disease, just in case anybody wasn't clear where the metaphor was going.
Yeah.
And then you've just said now that a well-articulated purpose permeates throughout all aspects of the organization. And is it safe to just make the inference in the inverse, which is that something toxic permeates throughout the whole of the organization as well?
Yeah. There's a little story to the word culturitis. It started with a blog, Kevin. It was 2016 that I put this blog out, and it was the original title was "Is your company suffering from toxic culture?" And my wife and I were walking our dogs in the lovely hillside in Singapore, And she said, you know what, that toxic culture is just it just doesn't feel right. And my wife has had a little tonsillitis, and she's been suffering from that for a while. And she said, yeah, this thing is irritating me. And then I just somehow on that walk, I was inspired by tonsillitis. And I said, you know what, gingivitis, tonsillitis, laryngitis, these sound good. And it just popped into my head, culturitis, right? I mean, it just fitted perfectly. And at that walk, we said, hey, that's good. I'm going to title my blog "Is a company suffering from culturitis?" And so that's a word I coined up. Hopefully, it'll be in the dictionary one day. But it is true, and I think and in the analogy here, and if you look at the book cover, there's a syringe being injected into a skyscraper, and I think inoculating your company against culturitis is something that what I had in mind when I wrote that book. How can we inoculate against this, right? And how can you prevent this from festering and growing? Because it does spread like cancer, and we have runaway cultures. We have cultures that have dragged businesses down, and we see stories of this everywhere. But oftentimes it goes undetected. It lies under the radar. Companies don't even know they have a problem until they discover that, oh my God, yes, we do, right? I mean, the outward manifestations become so sort of prevalent that they don't even feel that they have a culturitis issue. But these things are dangerous. And if there's a wonderful line by Edgar Schein, who's the father of culture, and he said, if a manager doesn't manage, if you don't manage the culture will manage you. And
Right.
and that's what happens to a lot of companies. It becomes so endemic that the culture just drags everything down, and it becomes a way of life. It becomes a belief system. So you need to control that. You need to create that belief system in a company that then influences everything that you do, and especially your people. I think that was the thinking behind the title, and metaphorically speaking, that's how we came up with that word. And curing culturitis would have been the perfect thing, but I wanted to make it a little stronger, and I think we landed on culling.
It's a very muscular word, that culling.
It's definitely stronger. Yeah.
It makes you think of camels gone wild in Australia, or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, in I suppose we've kind of set up the problem, and I don't know that the readership or kind of corporate land necessarily actually needs too much convincing on the problem side of this. For a lot of the folks that we interview and talk to, they really need to justify the quality and the scale of the problem. And my cold read of this is actually, if you said, hey, our culture's just going swimmingly, are they just fantastic, rich, organic environments for the best of people, you wouldn't have to set the problem up too aggressively.
Yeah.
But I love that you have such a clear framework here, and I know that a number of people in the professional world will too. So make my job as an interviewer really beautifully easy. Let's take a really steady pace through ADCOE. Yeah. If you will, for those who will just listen to this or don't know what I'm on about, it's ADCOE. But Ashok, maybe you can just kind of tell us what you've built here.
Sure. So one of the things is in the book, I just didn't want to highlight the culturitis issues, and people are probably are familiar once they read about that. And they say, so what can we do about it? Was really what I wanted to address. And there's a lot of books on business. There's lots of books on stuff and leadership and law and business books. There's tons, but there wasn't really a single book with a clear roadmap on how to transform, how to build the foundations for a strong culture. And I think that's what I wanted to really bring to the business world. And so I was toying this idea with this framework, and initially it had 10 steps, and now it's and then I sort of condensed it down to 7. So I wanted to make it a very practical journey for a company to do this, and depending on the size of the company, this can take various forms. You can get it done in a few weeks or even a few months, but it's an evolutionary process. And so ADCOE is an acronym for all the steps, and I'll quickly walk you through the process, and this is the actual process that I use, and I work with companies on their culture transformation. So the first step is A stands for the assessment side, where you got to take stock of your current culture, and there's several ways to do that. You look at your internal your surveys, your employee surveys, engagement surveys, or externally look at Glassdoor. Today we look at sites, review sites, and gives you an idea of how you're doing. It's unbelievable what has happened in the last 10 years. I always say that whatever happens in your company doesn't stay in your company anymore. Unlike Vegas, things are exposed. People vent on these review sites, and companies have no longer control of that information, and they can't control that narrative. Your employees actually are very powerful, and so Glassdoor today gives a good idea of how you're doing. Some of them people say it's perhaps biased in the negative, but generally people will talk more sort of vent from a negative perspective rather than a positive perspective. But it still gives you a great idea of what's happening inside. But then employee surveys, and most companies do this almost like routine once a year, and it doesn't give you a good idea. So asking empowering questions about how people feel in the company. And for me, there's one key metric, Kevin, here in the assessment is, would you recommend this company to a friend? And for me, that sums up your total culture on a scale of one.
A culture NPS.
That's it. It's a culture NPS. And I also nowadays I talk about a purpose NPS, and how on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about your company delivering on its purpose? And that's some new thing that we've added through the metric. But quite simply, get an idea. So the first step is get an idea of how you're doing from a culture perspective. What are some of the key issues? Where are the gaps? So after that, the next step is the D is for DNA, where we do some soul searching. And here's where most companies go wrong. They've written very loose or very thin, very weak mission and vision statements. So I help them, go to the core, and most companies haven't even written out a purpose statement. So this is an important process. This is your starting point, your DNA, where we work through a purpose statement. And we arrive at that, and sometimes we have to uncover that. Sometimes it's buried in the vision and the mission, but this is a lot of soul searching we do with the teams, and we then come up with very clear, simple purpose, vision, and mission statements. The next thing is the company codes, and the CO stands for the 4 codes. Company code is really company values. So most values today are fluff, or what I call fluff, right? Everybody picks a few words, and these are the standard words: integrity, teamwork, fun, respect, whatever. Yeah. And they say, okay, these are our company values. But the problem with those is everybody else has them, and most companies don't understand how to manifest them, or how we should live those values. Yeah. So if you look at companies that have done great work, if you look at Apple's, you look at the Googles of this world, and they're very, very powerful values that are well expressed and actionable. People can act on them. It's a guide on how people should behave. And so we go back and we do that. That idea is to do some soul searching about your values, and most of the times people have these single words, but needs to be expressed, and say, what do these really mean in our company, right? And so that's an exercise that needs to be done. And then we go next. The next step is the employee code, and this one literally spells out how people should behave in the company. Mm-hmm. I see this as a big challenge in Southeast Asia, where behavior is not addressed, and this is different from values. This is straight up, how people should treat each other in the company, treat each other. So people come from different cultures, and certain things are okay to do there. Like you walk into meetings with the laptop late 10 minutes, and that's okay from other companies. Or you don't wash your dishes in the pantry. Small things, or we don't help each other. It's very siloed, but stating these things and addressing these in an employee behavior is crucial, because these things then tell people who come into your company, hey, this is our religion, our values, this is what our belief system is, and then here's how we treat each other in the company. Mm-hmm. It's very important to state that, because a lot of things will be taken for granted or not addressed. And people will come in from different cultures where certain things are okay. Shouting or abusing people at meetings might have been okay in that previous company, but that's not how we do things over here. How do you pull people up and say that's not how we do things? You need to let them know initially that this is how we should behave. And so after that, the next step is, and I wanted to make this a very holistic a framework, not just a culture, yes, but covers everything from customers to product to how you live your culture every day. So the next code is your product code, and this one is about defining your vision for your products. What is it that you are creating for the world? Whether it's a product or a service. And this is a wonderful exercise, and say, what would that ideal product look like? And list down a few things in terms of, what are we creating for this world? And many companies haven't done this. They haven't set their vision for their product. And then we look at the customer code, which is how do we want to engage with our customers? How do we want to treat our customers? I included this because, again, quite simply, without customers, you don't have a business. And today we're seeing more and more cultures becoming tremendously customer centric, right? You see Amazon wanting to be the most customer centric company in the world. And as competition is moving into hyper competition, and today the fight for just customer loyalty is just going to be so critical. And so it's important to have some kind of a code written down in terms of how do we want to treat our customers. So what should be, what does joy or what does bliss feel like for our customers? And I think writing that down and putting that as part of your culture playbook is so important. And
maybe if I can just jump in there, something that we've seen. I was just speaking with a really successful writer on the business of client success, and for young professionals, it's actually not obvious. And for senior professionals, they feel like it is. It's like, well, that's a client. It's like you never call them if you don't have something valuable to add. Like, I thought we're supposed to call clients all the time. I thought I'm measured on, level of connection and engagement. It's like, you've got something to learn about. So like, there's a often unwritten, sometimes even unspoken code. And I actually, from our perspective, I love this aspect of the internal, what you said, the internal religion, right? The internal creed is, we have a way of thinking about the people we serve, and there's deep subtlety to it in a great culture. So I particularly like that one, and I think you can go very deep and very broad on just that one alone.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful exercise. So all these various steps is brainstorming with the teams across the company, and we pull in different people because, again, everyone should take ownership of this playbook and work towards that. This is the one that gets a lot of attention, the customer, because nobody thinks about it. It's normally relegated to the customer department, but you can't isolate that, because customer, as Tony Hsieh from Zappos said, and as you know, Zappos is one of the most customer-centric successful companies on the planet, and unfortunately Tony is not around with us with the tragic accident that he had. Was been bought by Amazon now. But Tony said a customer experience can't be a department, it has to be the whole company, because it comes down to your strategy, your goal, your budgets, and everything. You can't isolate it. We're living in such a competitive world. Every customer today has the potential to make or break your business. Reviews are what we go with. The word of mouth today is absolutely powerful, right? Many companies today are being built by or brought down by reviews. And so that's exactly what you said, Kevin. I mean, I think it needs to be an integral part of your culture. And so this was a very important sort of step in the culture playbook. How do we treat our customers? What's our relationship going to be? What do we want to make them feel? What does bliss or joy or customer satisfaction look like in our company, right? And so putting that down in a vision statement for your customers is absolutely paramount.
So when you complete that kind of work with the folks you work with, what does the end product look like? Is it a series of bullets? Is it like is it prose? Is it 30 pages of prose? Is it like
yeah?
So is it like an old leather-bound Harry Potter style, guide manual from the 1800s?
It's typically a PowerPoint. It starts with a culture playbook being a PowerPoint, and then it's
Yep.
manifested in many different ways. So each
Okay.
department can run with their own version of it. They create mini visions, and so companies can put it up as a mind map on a wall,
Yes.
and we've seen manifestations of that. So it takes various forms. But I typically we typically deliver a PowerPoint with a lot of pictures and staff
Yep.
fun moments in there, and it brings it to life. Again, I was inspired by HubSpot and all the other companies that have actually put these up on SlideShare. I mean, you can it's a 250 or 200 plus slide deck, the HubSpot culture, and it's wonderfully articulated and expressed. So really, yeah, like I said, it's the company credo. One of the things that I talk to companies is about, and this is a straight up question that I ask many leadership teams. I said, you have SOP, standard operating procedures for everything in your company, right?
Yeah.
Your logistics, so how you manufacture products. But do you have an SOP for running the company? And they go, what do you mean by that? I said, is there an instruction book on how we run this company? And that's missing. And that's what needs to be done. So this is the playbook. This is the operating manual, of your company. And that's the key thing. Most successful companies have this. They have created, they've spent the time and the energy to create their playbook. They refresh it every 2 years, 3 years. But it's important that we go and reference back. Leadership teams come and go, people come and go, but there's something about you that's intrinsically you in your company that needs to stay, right? And that makes you you. And that's a big part of this belief, this religion, this belief, this culture that you have.
So when you do some of this, we'll call it codification, since they're all called codes. When you do it, how good are people at it? Because it seems to me like they have to articulate things that up till then are kind of like ineffable, or sort of like, oh, I got. They have a vague sense, but are they quite good at it? Like picking out, hey, it's this and it's this and it's this, or are they quite bad at it? What have
Yeah.
you seen?
I think at first there's skepticism that, we got to sit down and do all this work, and we got tons happening. And I always like to say that people are running around in busyness, not in business. But everyone's really busy, and they, especially in Southeast Asia, they expect consultants to hand it down to them. And I said, sorry, this is your DNA. You have to work at it. You can't outsource your DNA, right? There's no way that this is going to happen. So once they start the first process, once we get into the DNA, they realize the power of this. They realize that they can actually make a difference in the company. And it's a wonderful, one of the first things I do is energize the teams around this, because I can see skepticism. I can see people are just jaded and tired. Maybe they've done this process and it hasn't worked for them. So I say, hey, here's another one of this, sort of exercises that we have to go through. But they feel, once they start working on this and they feel that this is different this time, because we're getting to the core, the essence, and then we draw them out, and I just lead this facilitation and discussion, and they slowly along the path realize that there's an unfoldment that's happening here that is beautiful, and they actually can make a big difference in the company. And this is perhaps the best time in the company that they can influence and they can make a difference. And so empowering everybody to input into that deck, and it just wonderful, because we fill up whiteboards, we do things, and we brainstorm, we have a lot of fun around this. And they're building the blocks. They're building the culture glue themselves. They're working on each aspect here, especially the last step, which we haven't talked about, which is the evangelize part, where you manifest, where you bring this culture to life every day. And this we do this with the entire across teams, depending on how big the organization is. We fill up a whole auditorium or a boardroom with this, and we have a whole day fun exercise where people talk about ways to bring this culture to life. And it could be small things like, if one of your values is we support each other like family, then we'll have this massive cork board in our boardroom and put thank you notes there every week. And just things like that, where we have a culture day or a value day. LinkedIn does this really, really well. So I give them ideas from how this works in different companies, and they actually look at it, plan out a 12 to 18 month calendar where they bring their culture to life. They bring their values to life. In everything that they do. So it's I think by the time they get to this first or second step, there's always skepticism in the first one, but by the time we get into DNA, then they realize the value, and then they give more time to this. So yeah, I mean, I've dealt with all levels of resistance in my various projects, and again, companies might have gone through this operation. They might have gone through this vision, mission writing stuff at some point, goal settings, but they don't see the value of doing this from a whole different perspective. So a lot of it is about changing that mindset and starting with empowering questions and bringing people on board. And once that happens, it's the momentum is there.
So it must be the case that when you're kind of sitting people down, maybe you have to chain them to a chair at first, but you sitting folks down saying, look, I need you to start to articulate, say the customer code, the employee code.
Yeah.
It must be the case that some of the things that they come up with are observations of things inside the organization today that are just great. They're just healthy. It's unique to them. It's their style, and they want to keep it, and they love it. And part of the value, I suppose, is you forced them to actually articulate it. And before then, it was just sort of a unwritten behavior. And it must be the case that they dig out something and they say, this is just like a sample of that, like multiple myeloma cancer that's rolling around our culture. And it exists. It's something we do, but it's something I wish we didn't do.
Yeah.
So there must be, am I right about this? That as Absolutely. They go through and you kind of do an inventory, there must be a simultaneous sorting, and like, this one's neutral. It's neither like amazing nor, horrible. Put it to one side. This is great. We need to keep it. And that's toxic and it's killing us.
Yeah. So there's the fun exercise again. So let's be specific regarding the customer side of things. And I think the metrics are there. So companies say we have a 3.2 Google rating right now on reviews, and we would like to be a 4. So, okay, that's good. And you can see the comments. You can see what people are saying about your company, right? And we talk to partners, we talk to the partners and whoever else that they're engaging with to get a sense of how, people feel from a customer perspective. So that's very easy to address. And some things that are working, those are positives. We look to amplify those. And the other things they might not feel are a problem issue, but we prioritize. You have to prioritize some things that will move the needle. So what will create the maximum impact going forward. But again, we connect back to purpose, right, Kevin? Because the whole thing needs to address, so why are we doing this? What is the key purpose? And what is that greater good that we want to achieve in the world? And so, once you see that connect flow through, it's easier for you to filter and sift through things that say, okay, this is more aligned with our purpose. This maybe not so much. So we actually go through an exercise where I create a purpose visioneering exercise for the customer department, for instance, and we say, if our purpose were true 3 years from now, if we delivered on our purpose, what would customer experience look like?
Right.
And then you reverse engineer that, right? And say, okay, to achieve this, what do we need to do now, right? Because that's aligned with our purpose, and this is what customer delight looks like. Now, let's reverse engineer, say, what is it that we need to achieve to be able to get that outcome?
I see. So then it could easily be the case that they pick out something that's happening in the organization today. And it's actually great. It's delightful, but unfortunately it has to go on the cutting room floor because it no longer serves the
greater purpose. Yes. Yeah. And once we do that, and then people get absolute clarity around the purpose and how it permeates through all operations, all aspects of the business. This is a process that I sort of came up with, and it's a wonderful exercise. It's called purpose visioneering, where we look at all the departments and we say, if our purpose were fulfilled, and I look at it 3 years down the line and say, this is what we would look like from a comms department. This is what our marketing would look like. This is what our products would look like. This is what our customer experience would look like. And so when you have that vision, now it's about pulling it into reality. So people see the end result. Even from a people perspective, your L&D teams, like, I mean, what do you want your people to become at the end of at the end of this period? We see ourselves as being, tech savvy. We have grown. We have achieved this. So you write it like a press release almost.
Yeah.
You write it like a press release. And so once you have those mini vision statements across your various departments, then it's easy to move towards in that direction because people see the outcomes. The problem we have today is people don't realize what are these, what does success, what does purpose fulfillment feel like and look like. So having that vision, creating those mini visions for each department is powerful.
Do you think that there's a risk in a trend that's happening? So if we go back say a couple of decades, you've got sort of pure Milton Friedman-esque definitions like, look, a company is not the place where you get your hugs and your meaning and your everything else. Like there's places for that for you. That's your church and your home and your tennis club or whatever. The purpose of a company, to quote him, is to increase its profits. Let's keep it simple. So do you think that there's you're working with organizations and leaders who need to examine purpose and define it in a variety of ways? So they could go anything as kind of cut and starched as that, or they can be quite elaborate, right? Our purpose is to create a richer world, and then they go on to get precise.
Yeah.
Is there risk in this? Is there risk in sort of asking an organization to be too much?
Yeah. It is a good balance. So let me begin by quoting Simon Sinek here, who says that money and success and shareholder value is all a byproduct of having a strong purpose. Okay. You don't begin by saying we want to be a $1 billion company by this date. It's really your that's a result. It's always a result of what you do, right? So by having amazing people that are constantly challenging themselves, that are disrupting themselves, innovating, creating amazing products, having amazing customers who are your brand evangelists, and creating a work environment that's attracting the topmost talent and retaining. That's how you're going to get to that $1 billion, right? So it's always a result. So your starting point can't be your profit or your money. It needs to be something else that motivates people. Someone joining a company doesn't really care about you being a $1 billion company or who that doesn't matter. People care about themselves, Kevin. That's the only thing an employee cares about. What about me? And today that's dialed up a lot more, especially after COVID. I think 75% of the workforce around the world is going to be millennials by 2025.
Right.
And their priorities have changed in terms of joining. They just don't want to join any organization. Money actually is number 6 on their list of priorities. They want to be part of something bigger. They want to be sort of motivated intrinsically.
Yes.
And they don't just want to join any company. They want to join a company that stands for something, and they want to be part of that. They want to have a story to share with their peers, their parents about, I'm part of this, and we create this in the world. And I think that's where leaders need to realize the old school was money and shareholder value, but these are all byproducts of having a great purpose today and having a greater good. Money, you need to be profitable. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely important because you don't have a successful business if you have no money, but you can't approach it purely from a monetary perspective. Money will come if you have all these blocks in place. You are an amazing company. And I sum it up in my book by 3 key things where you're a company that customers adore, employees love, and the world admires. So again, that's broad. Employees love. That means I wake up every morning, I feel inspired to go to work. I'm motivated. I'm not dragging my foot on a Monday morning, dragging my feet to go to work. And I come home feeling fulfilled, that I've done something meaningful in my day, and I give 100%. Every leader wants their employees to give 100%, but today people are asking, I just don't feel like that right now. I'm unless I am growing or you motivated me to do something, then I will give you 100%. And again, coming back to the millennials, their priorities are very different. So the majority of the workforce today is going to be millennials who are not looking just for a paycheck, showing up for a paycheck and a desk and a name tag and a computer. And they want to be part of something bigger. And those great companies who have great cultures have already realized this, the Googles, the Swirls, the Disneys, and they're attracting the best talent, and they're highly profitable at the end of it, hugely profitable. So yeah, so I think to contextualize this, the paradigm has shifted slightly. Yes, it used to be about shareholders, and I'll talk about 4 key stakeholders. Every business today, fairly large size businesses, need to look at 4 key stakeholders. Number 1 are your people, right? And number 2 will be your customers. Number 3 will be the communities that you serve, and the most powerful stakeholder, the one that's most important today, is the planet. What are you doing what is your piece? What is your story about sustainability here and helping heal our planet? So these are the 4 key stakeholders that need to be addressed. So in my new book, Kevin, I'll share. I connect the dots between that, and I'll give you a little sneak peek here between.
Yes, please.
Between culture, brand, and customer. So I call it the golden triangle of massive business success. So we're currently at the 3 stages, the 3 states of business consciousness. If you were to look at the world of business today, the most basic state is transactional, where a company would be purely involved in creating products, buying and selling, and there's nothing much happening there. People work, they come and go, and it's there's not much intrinsic motivation, purely transactional. And a large percentage of businesses are in that. And they might be profitable for a while, or they might go under as competition grows, but there's nothing energizing more than money and products and services. The next higher stage is when a business has become self-aware of itself. And it is partly transformational. It is perhaps written a vision statement or some sort of a mission, and it knows that they are here for doing some good. They treat people better. They look at people as resources, as their resource, and they nurture them. And they also have done some work around their customers. So a lot of companies fall in that mid-range piece here. But there's a higher state of consciousness where a company is a truly evolved enterprise, where they have now become purpose-driven. It's the greater good that's driving everything that they do, and they manifest this in right through the company, and hugely successful, hugely profitable. People love this company. Employees adore this company, and people look up and admire you because you are a force for good. You have become a true purpose-driven company, and so I'm helping companies who want to be in that space. They want to be the top 10 best places to work. And there are several metrics that define you, where people you want to be part of you. They're banging on your doors to work for you. And I think that's the consciousness where I'm helping companies to be. And that is the ultimate evolved enterprise. And many companies are there already. I mentioned names like Patagonia, there's Singapore. A few companies are working to get into that space, because then it's on autopilot. You've created a wonderful company. It's truly purpose driven. Employees are energized, fully charged. They give 100%. You are innovative products and services. You're ahead of the curve, and everything is just working in beautiful synchronicity around to create that magic, successful, long-term successful business.
Wow. I mean, I can tell that you're animated about it, and I'm excited to see how it comes out. What is the timeline for that manuscript?
The working title is the Golden Triangle of Massive Business Success.
Yeah, and when will we see that come for readers?
Well, I'm halfway through it. I had to rewrite a few.
I won't bully you. I'll back off the pressure.
My goal is by the end of this year to launch that book. And with COVID, a lot of things had to be reframed, and new perspectives had to come in, because it changed a lot about the way businesses are run and priorities, etc.
Yeah. A couple of questions that are still hanging on, and it's going to bug me. I won't sleep nicely if I don't ask you these. I'll use an illustration from my own business, which I was running before. I was running a few offices for another organization, we had a beautiful culture, and we were able to identify a number of things. I'll give you two examples. One was that a lot of us flew, and we would come back to Singapore, and there was a habit of buying something from the duty free to just plop on the pantry table. And it could be anything, right? In Chinese New Year, it's going to be the Chinese New Year snack. Sometimes it was, a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey, but it was this habit. And we talked about this sort of unwritten code. And actually, there were almost like teachers inside the organization that would be like, "Hey, mate, like I know you're new here, but when you come back from Thailand, you bring a snack. Like I don't care if it's a pack of gum, but like that's just what we do." It was beautiful, right? It was quaint. And then I think another one was that when there were birthdays, there was cake or muffins or something, and there was the birthday song. Now we could agree that that's cool, and there's a lot of things that create meaning there, and I sort of love the civility of it, but it breaks at a certain size of scale. So nobody in that group disagreed that that wasn't cool and about the right thing to do. But as soon as you get beyond like 12, then it's like, how many birthdays we got going on here, guys? Right? Like it seems like we're singing the happy birthday song twice a week now, and I've had it with cake. And it's kind of humorous, but there's something deeper underneath it, which is that some of the things that you are talking about and addressing in culturitis, the opposite, very healthy culture, can only obtain at certain levels of scale. So you couldn't go to, the LinkedIn offices here with hundreds of employees and be like, "We sing happy birthday to every employee." It's like, you can't possibly. The only thing you'd be doing is singing happy birthday.
Yeah.
So,
No,
what's your wisdom on something like that, where the quality of the culture has something to do with the size?
No, absolutely. It's interesting that you bring up the cake. We used to do that at Disney and then at the Sony Pictures as well. And then we decided that, well, let's have a cake once a month. And all the birthdays in that month, because we were eating a lot of cake. But the idea, and what we're getting to here, the core of it is a sense of belonging. And I think, the camaraderie, the sense of belonging, and it's very high up on one of the needs for someone joining a company today. Having the sense, as human beings, I think, we're all tribal creatures at the end of the day, and we need that sense of belonging. And these little moments where we celebrate things, and this can be done in teams, it can be done not at whole company level. Small companies, yes, it gets a foot. Otherwise, you're going to end up with 12, two cakes every week, and the time that takes. But there's other ways you can do that. I mean, you can pop an email, you can have a thank you note, things like that. There's several other ways that you can bring it to life. But it all goes to create that sense of belonging, and that's very powerful, because once you have people who are going to have your back, who look after you, who treat you well, and you are participating in that person's growth. All that is so powerful, and this will make you stay longer. It feels like this family thing. One of the values we work for a company is that we treat each other like family, and then we articulated what that means. I mean, some families don't treat each other very well, really. So in my family, I scream at my sister. Is that okay in your company? No. But really, what does it mean? We support, we go above and beyond, we help, and so those things are important. And these little moments where you celebrate people's successes, you celebrate milestones in their lives. I think to call these out is absolutely crucial and fun. You can do this at a group level. You can do this at a department or a team level. It really depends on each company and how they want to bring it to life. But creating the sense of belonging is absolutely powerful. And there's so much research that's coming back that shows that people who feel that they're connected with others, that generally tend to be a lot more productive. They're more engaged. It leads directly to employee engagement and people wanting to come to work, because we have that, extended family at work as well that cares about you. And after COVID, it's become even more crucial. One of the things I wanted to bring up here, and I had this conversation just yesterday with a manager, and I said, we were not trained to be counselors. Nobody was trained to be. We're managers, right? We want to manage people. Managers do that, but I think one of the things everybody had to grapple with very quickly is this whole mental thing where people were really struggling, right, with this work-life balance and working from home. And so a lot of people just couldn't address these issues because they were not trained as counselors.
Yeah.
And a lot of people needed this help. They just needed to speak to someone, and they felt they couldn't open up to their managers because managers were not even trained to be able to handle this kind of stuff. So it opened up a whole new thing with companies, and there's several organizations, including DHL, who really took this on board. They created an app. You could call people up, appear anytime if you're having a problem, and and things like that help create that sense of belongingness, the sense that we've been cared for beyond just what we do every day. There's a humaneness to this whole thing, and that goes along with. Yeah.
You doing okay? Do you need to go?
Yep. No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'll share with you one or two anecdotes from the field as we see it, which I think will resonate with your work. Coaching is a theme that we've pursued very heavily in our author interviews. And that's because we've taken a spur from our clients, many of whom want to know what the hell it is, how does it work, how much does it cost, how is it supposed to work, should our own people be doing it, should we be getting people from outside, etc. And then when we look at the academy building work that we're doing, so much of that requires either a coach or a mentor or a guide to see people through those things. And in one particular case, it's like they have basically a coach on call. So the organization is digging into their pocket to just say, look, this is the person you go to. They will organize for you a coach to see you through whatever. And we actually don't care. So that's it could be, your questions about your religious faith. It could be how to do P&L sheets, right? Like it actually doesn't matter what you're going in for. So quite interesting. And they think about it in their academy world, right? So like, how do we develop, cultivate, and train people? And so it falls under that category, not some other division like wellness or something, right? They're thinking about it as education.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very telling. And then I think the other thing that I really pick up on is evangelizing the new culture. So this is where, again, our work, what we see is like, how do you teach? What happens with teaching and learning at work? And I think maybe the lens here is it's actually happening anyway. It might be happening at a low quality, and it might be the wrong topics and whatever. Like probably it's mimesis, right? People are watching, especially junior folks are watching senior folks and going, okay, so that's how we roll, right? Dress code, hours you keep, how you treat one another. But I really love this idea of evangelizing, the root word of which, of course, is like sharing good news, right? I have something positive that I want to convey, which is here in this place, this is how we treat our clients. So sometimes I may not do that, by the way, but I'm sharing with you what the ideal is. And so inside, academies and the like, there's a lot of work that happens, I think, as all of the hard work that you're talking about is done. And it goes to that passage that I read at the end. It's like, just because you've been with your trainer for 6 months and now you're conditioned, and that does not mean you get to ease off the routine.
Absolutely. I think at the core of this is this inherent need for us to grow as human beings and become, like I said, the best versions of ourselves. And companies that help their employees become the best versions of themselves are going to be rewarded with loyalty, with passion, right? We all come to this world, to this life, to experience and grow and become who we are meant to be in a way. And companies that realize that, we're not in this static environment where, people just learn how to do the job, but understand why, and constantly look at enhancing their own growth and looking at ways to do that, whether it's a formal process. I hugely sort of subscribe to the mentorship program, and I'm a product of that as well. At Disney, we had assigned mentors for us for 2-3 months, and we could pick anyone in the company to help us and guide us, and it was amazing. It was very, very powerful. Kevin, like you said, there's so much wisdom in a company that's latent there. It's just in that company, and I think tapping into that, especially with older employees, we're entering this whole new phase of work where people are going to be working into their 60s and perhaps even 70s now. In France, has just increased the retirement age. There's a wealth
if France has done it, then anyone can do it.
Exactly. So I think there's a wealth of knowledge with sitting with people that have been in the company for a long time, and I think helping younger employees with that mentorship is powerful. Coaching absolutely is critical. And again, it's about helping people sort of become who they are truly meant to be. There's a wonderful company right across the border here, and they're looking at developing people holistically, not just from productivity and the work aspect, but becoming an overall better human being. So mindfulness and meditation and things like that, where companies are investing into the whole self stuff now, and people are seeing a value in that, especially during COVID. I know many companies that had mindfulness workshops and meditation sessions, and it really helped people become more centered, and they're learning new skills beyond work. And so I think we need to look at that kind of holistic human being development. And when people get that from a company, they just are so connected. They're connected at a deeper level, right? And that's where they feel passionate to do their work. They feel they're growing. They have great mentors. They're being coached. They're being helped in other areas, and that's powerful. And that's what in turn makes you feel like giving 100% to the company. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Ashok, can you believe an hour just flew by like that? We barely scratched the surface. You market beautifully, I think, probably because of your background, and so you're very findable. But even still, how would you like people to either seek out your coming writings, your current blog writings, your book, or your personal services and work with the business?
Well, thank you for allowing me to plug that. So Transform and Transcend is the name of my company. That's the YouTube channel as well. There's a lot of content that I put out on YouTube on a weekly basis. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would be great. The book's on Amazon. It's available, and I'm around doing a lot of speaking gigs for conferences and companies. So I'm happy to put you on my mailing list. To email me, it's Ashok at Transform and Transcend. .com, .co, not com, .co. It's Ashok at transformandtranscend.co, and I'll be happy to put you on my mailing list and alert you to any online inspiration sessions that come up and do. So yeah, you can there's a lot of information available on the website as well on Transform and Transcend regarding the work I do, culture transformation, brand and customer experience transformation as well. So I like to end by saying that we'll face a lot of adversities in life, and in my time I have my fair share, and I think for me these were just stepping stones to something greater. And I honestly believe there is some kind of a path that's chosen for us in some way, and it manifests in some people. It manifests early, some people it manifests later in life, and when you find that, it's beautiful, and you live life on purpose. You discover what you're meant to be is in this world. And I can clearly see your passion as well in the work that you do, Kevin, with your amazing company, and it's truly transformational as well. So that's it. I'm hoping I can help more companies reach their full potential, rise to their true greatness, and become forces for good. And there's so much work to do in that space. So, yep, with that, I'll just say thank you, Kevin.
Mr. Miranda, thank you, sir.